everyone. I welcome you to the CEC lecture series. I'm Nupur Chawla, teaching English literature at Maitri College, Delhi University. And today we are going to talk about this very important feminist text by this 19th century feminist writer Charlotte Perkins Gilman, and the essay is titled Women and Economics. Now that is part of the title. If you look at the entire title, it is Women and Economics, a study of the economic relation between men and women as a factor in social evolution. So in this lecture we are going to discuss about the second contention that that Gilman makes in this in the first segment of her essay. Right. So in the previous lecture we had talked about the first contention, that is how economic progress in the 19th century was majorly considered to be masculine. Now we move on to the second contention that she makes, that is the second contention that she has, that is the economic value of domestic industry. Right, and we had also briefly at the end of the previous lecture also discussed about what do we mean by domestic industry. So domestic industry, we'll just very quickly go over it once again, that when we look at the term domestic industry, it is a particular way of approaching the idea of the domestic space. Right, so usually the domestic space is talked about in terms of family, in terms of kinship, in terms of the nature of relations or equations between individuals. But Gilman, because her standpoint is economics, so she looks at the domestic sphere in economic terms, and because she is talking about women, she is thinking of what, if at all, is the economic value of the work that women do as part of being a housewife. Right? So these women who do not go out to work or do not so to say very directly contribute in any public sphere, but they manage the kitchen, they manage the family, they manage everything associated with domesticity. Is there an economic value to that or not? That is the beginning thought for this contention in Gilman. Now she says that what economic product could women give in exchange for what they consume? And that's the first important point that she makes. She is over here talking about the condition of married women. Okay, and she says that women kind of take from men, not exactly take, but we see that how men are providers of the domestic space, they are providers of food, they are providers of all these facilities to women. Right? So that's her beginning argument. So then she says that women are getting all of this from men. Right, a space to live, the food that they eat is from the money that men have made in their work outside. So what do women kind of give in exchange for that? Right, now this is a very interesting idea that she seems to be engaging in over here. So in fact she uses the term economic product. So what is that? What is that economic product that women end up giving in exchange for what they get from the man? So you see, she is looking at the domestic sphere from a very different perspective, right? And therefore we are you must also over here note that she is, while discussing the domestic space in these terms, she is basically trying to establish the significance of women also, that how women then are not supposed to be sidelined because they are not kind of going out to work. And therefore this entire question, that what is that economic product that they give in exchange for the shelter of or not exactly the shelter, or for the dwelling space that they get from the man in marriage, right? So she seems to partially answer this when she says, and I quote, although women are not producers of wealth, women serve in the final processes of distribution and preparation. Now, what does she mean over here? She says that she had asked that what is the economic product that women give in exchange, right? So she says that that economic product is not, kind of in terms of money, right? Now, women are not producers of wealth, while which is the major case in the 19th century. Again, let's not forget that she's talking about the 19th century context, right, where not a lot of women are working. So she says that although that women are not producers of wealth, but they serve in the final processes of distribution and preparation. Now, what do we mean by the processes of distribution and preparation? It means that once the man earns the money, so it's the woman in the house then who kind of takes care of the distribution of various goods, of management of different aspects of the family, of using that money to for the purpose of food, for the purpose of different aspects of running the household, right? So that money then, which is earned by the man, ultimately is connected to this role of the woman in the household, where it's the woman then who is engaged in the process of the distribution and preparation of all those services or all those goods which are bought with that money, right? So she is then over here trying to establish that what is the role that a woman plays in the domestic sphere, right? Now, from there, she goes on to point out that women's labor in the household does have a genuine economic value, right? So she is stating that how women's labor has an economic value. But then she kind of, at the same time is aware of the social norms which seem to contend with this kind of an understanding. She says that while the labor that women do in the house does have an economic value, but she says that the labor which a wife performs in the house is actually given as part of her functional duty, right? So what happens? That the work that a woman does in the house is passed off as a duty of hers, right? As a duty which is hers on account of her being a wife to somebody, on account of her being a mother of a few children, right? So all that she does then gets subsumed in this logic of what Gilman calls as the functional duty. Okay, so you see, now you might wonder that what is the difference between duty and economic value. So the foremost thing is the fact that duty is that which you do out of some kind of a obligation, right? And you do not exactly expect a return for what you are doing in that case. So then a duty in that sense, particularly as it's used over here, is seen to remain away from that sphere of economic exchange, right? It is almost a duty, we should understand it as a kind of a moral obligation, right? That as a woman, she is supposed to perform these tasks, right? So this is the social bias that Gilman points towards, right? That how in the 19th century, all that women were doing in the house then was not exactly given as much importance because it was considered to be as some kind of a duty. And you might wonder that this has some parallel even in the thought processes today, right? Now, I will of course leave it to you to decide to what extent is there an overlap, right? But this is definitely a very important question that she is raising in the essay, right? So then she says that while women's labor in the household does have an economic value, but women do not get the economic value of their domestic industry, right? Why do not they get the economic value of the domestic industry? Because clearly it is considered to be as part of their duty. So you see how over here Gilman is framing the marginalization of women, not in social, not in legal, but in economic terms. So her entire register while discussing the women's question remains to be economic. Okay, so even if she is looking at the position of women within the domestic sphere, she is approaching it from the economic perspective, and she is looking at the fact that how the work that they do is the labor that women do as as being part of the family, or as particularly being housewives. They do not get the economic value of that labor which they do, right? And why? Because it is passed off as a duty which then is not entitled to any kind of a monetary or any substantial exchange value, so to say, right? So then what do we see? That men who are working outside, so it seems to be the case, I mean, her argument seems to be pointing out towards the fact that any labor which is done in the public domain, which is the domain of men, so to say, is the one that is considered to be worthy of being part of the entire system of economic exchange. And the private sphere then remains completely outside of it, right? Private sphere, which is majorly feminine, right, then does not participate or is not considered to be fit enough to participate in this framework of economic exchange. And this then frames the very important aspect of women's subordination that one notices in the 19th century. Okay, so now from here we move on to the third contention that Gilman makes in the essay. The first contention was that economic growth is considered to be essentially masculine in the 19th century. Second contention was where she was talking about the economic value of domestic industry, right? Now the third contention is, which is somewhat connected with the second one, where she is focusing on the motherhood as a factor in economic exchange, right? So far we have seen that how in general the labor done by women doesn't enter that kind of an exchange, but when it comes to motherhood, Gilman has something to say, right? So let's see what does she say, and I'll quote this first instance that she states in the essay. She says, and I quote, "Nothing could be more repugnant to human feeling or more socially and individually injurious than to make motherhood a trade." Now what is happening? You might wonder, is she contradicting herself? What she is highlighting is that, you see, a lot of times whenever people are asked about what is it that women gain from their domestic work, or what is it that women give to the man in exchange for the shelter or the food that he gets home, that is the answer for most people, by most people, as pointed out by Gilman, is that of motherhood, right? That she performs the role of mother, she performs the role of the nurturer, so to say, and then that seems to be one economic commodity, as Gilman also points out in the essay, that women seem to give in exchange to the man, right? And Gilman very clearly has problems with this perspective. She says that it is absolutely repugnant to kind of approach motherhood as a trade, right? Now, she says this another. In the same context, she makes this very important point. She says that when we look at the human mother, right, she labors her entire life in the service of not only her children but of men, different men in the family, right? She sometimes also does a little for the church, if she is allowed, that is. She does for the society, if she is able to do for the society. Now, these are again points which Gilman makes, right? That if that she does for the society, if she is able to do something, then she also kind of does something for charity and education and reform, right? So she is basically trying to highlight that how women and their entire being is not only restricted to the domestic sphere alone. So it is wrong to say that women just have this aspect of motherhood to give in exchange to the society or to the man, right? So that's why she says that it is also kind of unethical. It is kind of inhuman for us to reduce women to just this one role, that is of motherhood. So that's why she is establishing that how that apart from taking care of children and laboring throughout her life, right? That's what Gilman kind of highlights, that laboring throughout her life, apart from all of this untiring work or this tireless work or working tirelessly, she actually also engages in charity, she engages in education, she engages in the church to the extent that is available to her in the social convention. So what she says is that Gilman points out that women then are working in many ways that are not the ways of motherhood alone. Okay, and therefore she also says, and I'll just very quickly quote, you see, she says that women work longer and harder than most men and not solely in maternal duties. Okay, so again, what is she doing? That she is further highlighting this kind of a dignity. She is giving women the due of the work that they are doing in the household, which usually is considered to be as tangential, is considered to be of not as much value, or kind of gets usually sidelined. So what she is trying to say is that on the other hand, on the contrary, women actually work harder, they work longer than most men, and not solely in maternal duties. So that how women's mode of operation is not only restricted to one particular sphere of motherhood, but instead they go beyond maternal duties, and also the fact that we must not forget the duration, the hard work, and all of that which goes into a woman's role in the house, right? Now she further goes on to give the example to corroborate what she is saying. Now, she talks about the savage mother who carries the burdens for the entire tribe, right? Savage mother means a woman belonging to a tribe, right? So she says that if you observe a tribal woman, she carries the burdens for the entire tribe. She does a lot of work day in and day out, which not only involves just the duties towards the family, but she also does things for the tribe. So how then the mother who is a tribal then is contributing to the tribe per se also through the work that she does. Likewise, she also talks about the peasant mother. Now you see how beautifully what she has done. Now this term peasant mother brings together the two aspects of A, of motherhood, and B, of being a peasant, right? So the idea of a peasant brings to mind a particular kind of an economic engagement, and motherhood is conventionally a very clear sociological category. And when Gilman brings these two together, that is the beauty of her argument, that how she wants to unshackle women and make us approach women in terms of the genuine work that they do, which a lot of times is beyond the domestic space, right? So she says that even the peasant mother toils in the fields, and the working man's wife in the home also does an equal amount of work, right? So whatever be the position that a woman might be in, that she might be a tribal mother, she might be a peasant mother who's working in the fields, or it might just be a mother of a working man's wife who's working in the domestic sphere, right? She is contributing substantially to various tasks which unfortunately may kind of remain muted in the usual discussions. So what we see then is the fact that Gilman, by approaching the position of women from the economic perspective, tries to highlight these gaps in our approach to women, right? So she is trying to point out that how one can also understand the equation between men and women, not only through the framework of through an examination of the social conventions, not just through an example of the social institutions such as matrimony, etc., but we can also look at the position of women in society in terms of the woman's space in the sphere of economic exchange. So this kind of an analysis also gives us a very important insight into the kind of position that a woman held in the 19th century and how that position remained to be precarious, right? So basically, so that is the first thing that we say, that throughout these three contentions that she is making, where she's talking about the this idea of growth being looked at as economic growth being looked at as masculine, then second by talking about the economic value of domestic industry, and then third by talking about motherhood as a factor in economic exchange. So through this kind of an engagement, she's trying to do two things. First, she's trying to establish this kind of a intersectional understanding of gender vis-a-vis economics. So she is giving us a yet another lens from where, or yet another standpoint from where we can examine the gender equation, or from where we can examine the equation between men and women, and thereby understand still better the position that women hold in society, right? That is the first thing that we established while we go through the three contentions. And the second thing that we see that's also happening here through these three contentions that Gilman puts forth is that how she's trying to indicate that women, while a discussion of economic value then is not only helpful for us to look at the disadvantaged position of women in society, but at the same time this kind of an economic angle also is used by Gilman to give woman her due, right? To give woman the dignity of labor that so far has been denied to her, right? So where Gilman then seems to broaden the understanding of the word labor, and she's sensitizing the reader to the fact that how labor is not only work that is done outside of the home, it's not only work which is done in the conventional jobs or industries, but even what women do at home is labor. It is worthy of that stature, and also the fact that women's labor cannot be restricted within just the framework of motherhood or being a housewife, but instead it goes much beyond, and how women then engage in multiplicitous activities on a daily basis, all of which goes unrecognized, right? So through this kind of an engagement, then Gilman is making us rethink about the women's question in 19th century. Right? Now, these are some of the arguments that she makes in the first part of the essay, and I'm sure that with this kind of a discussion, you might have already got the interest, and I would urge you to kind of also read the other parts of the essay, because the questions that she is raising, because the standpoint that she takes is very, very relevant, and it's not often discussed, and that is where the value of Gilman's argument lies. So this intersectional equation between gender and economics is an important aspect for us to consider when we are looking at the women's question, or when we are approaching the theoretical category of women's experience through feminism. Thank you.